Are you an adventurer looking to take your hunt to the next level? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast presented by onX. This week on the episode, I want to talk about onX's Timber Cuts feature. So United States Forest Service Timber Cuts shows areas of logging operations on national forest land over the past 5 years and actually goes beyond in most areas. And this layer is perfect for targeting thinned out areas of the forest, some thicker areas for, potential bedding, just food sources, everything else. With this episode being all about timber cuts, I figured this was a good feature to be able to talk about. And in addition to that, if you head over to my YouTube channel, just Beau Martonik, I have a whole video of how to hunt timber cuts as a part of the Mountain Bucks scouting series. So check that out. And if you want to, try out the onX Hunt app, which is the premier GPS hunting app for your phone, tablet, and your desktop, then head over to onxmaps.com. Use the coupon code EMW. That'll save yourself 20% off of the app. The University of Elk Hunting online course. So Corey Jacobson and Elk 101 have put together the most comprehensive and complete resource for increasing your elk hunting knowledge, confidence, and hopefully your success. I'm going to have Corey on the podcast again here soon to talk about e-scouting and, breaking down some hunts on, from e-scouting and what worked, what didn't. And, Corey really breaks it down in this course, which one of the hardest things and what everyone always talks about when they hunt elk is the hardest part is finding the elk. So this course, like I said, just really teaches you how to use onX, how to use the other resources to be able to locate elk and get that out of the way so you can get your at-bats, your opportunities. So head over to elk101.com, click on the University of Elk Hunting online course, and if you use the coupon code EastMeetsWest, that'll save yourself 20% off of a year membership to the online course. And lastly, but not least, tethered. So I mentioned in the last podcast, I just got the Phantom saddle in the mail. And so instead of talking about all the features of the Phantom saddle, as it is the Cadillac of saddle hunting, I want to talk about tethered saddle kit building system. So if you go over on tetherednation.com, head over to their build your own custom kit. It walks you through everything you need. You can click different options, check it out, and build your own custom kit that's tailored to you. And your pricing will update as you move through the list to kind of figure out what's going to fit in your budget and how to build your ultimate saddle hunting kit. So as I said, head over to tetherednation.com, check all that out, learn about saddle hunting before you make a purchase, see if it's right for you. I tried it last year and I am hooked on doing that. It's just another tool in my toolbox for doing this. So check that out at tetherednation.com. And so I've been doing some summer scouting here recently. And when I say that, most of my summer scouting is using trail cameras and I've been taking them out, putting them around timber cuts, trying to locate bucks from last year or some areas from spring scouting. And although bucks aren't normally in their range, I'm really trying to get inventory at this time of year and see what's out there. Just a fun time to get out. Although you usually won't catch me in the middle of the day. It's going to be either early mornings or in the evenings when the temperature is a little cooler and it's not as humid and muggy out. But really looking forward to this deer season and what's to come. So as I mentioned in the last podcast, because this is part 2 with Steve Sherk, so if you haven't listened to the first part, go back and check that out first. But I'm also going to be doing a big Sitka giveaway next week on the 2-part series with Chris Derrick of Sitka Gear, talking about the new mobile hunting pack. We're going to be giving that away. All the other new things that are coming out from Sitka in 2020, but more importantly, how to build a system for you. And whether that's Sitka or that's anything else, just learning the importance of a layering system when it comes to whitetail hunting. It gets talked about a lot from the big game side of things, but not as much with whitetails. So I wanted to break that down with Chris and how to do that. So be sure to look out for that episode next week. And on this episode with Steve Sherk, as I said, a little bit earlier here, also have a video on the YouTube series about hunting timber cuts. But Steve is a master when it comes to this. And so him and I talk about why you should hunt timber cuts, where the bucks are bedding in these timber cuts. Is it on the edge or the interior? When thick is just too thick. Still hunting these logging cuts from the ground, using the onX Hunt app to locate timber cuts, understanding the different ages of these cuts, and then finally patience and confidence kills, which was the main topic of the last episode here. I really enjoyed doing this podcast with Steve. He's extremely successful. If you haven't checked out him, check him out on Instagram at Sherk's Guide Service, and also on Facebook. He guides hunters from all over the country in Pennsylvania, and some of the hardest hunting available for whitetails, but it is extremely good experience. So definitely check out Steve after you listen to the series. So thanks for listening, and if you like it, leave a rating and review. It really helps out a ton. I want to change gears here, kind of quite a bit, but I want to go and talk about timber cuts.
Okay.
I want to talk about logging cuts. I want to talk about clear cuts. Yep. And you and I both hunt clear cuts. Yep. And I kind of want to, I have a way that I go and look at it, and I want to see what you think of, when it comes to timber cuts. So,
okay.
First of all, explain why timber cuts are, something that you look at.
Sure. Well, I mean, I hope I'm not being too basic, but
no.
Anyways,
explain it from a basic standpoint.
Yeah, obviously when you don't log, you don't have young generation of trees, which makes thick cover. So, without logging, there would be very little cover, and that's what deer, especially mature bucks, want, and that's what they need. So, if I'm always watching out where there's logging, and a lot of people you hear, oh man, they just logged my area and now it's ruined. And you know what? It kind of is ruined for a short period of time. Now you lost your cover, but really what it's really like is, say if you had someone come in and remodel your house. For a little while your house is a disaster and it's not what you want. But then once it finally gets a chance to be built back, you get something better out of it. Yep. So that's really what logging is I know that obviously in this world we need trees, we need paper, we need all that stuff, but for a habitat perspective, logging is one of the most important things, not just for deer, but for many, many species of wildlife. So, if there's anyone that stands behind logging, it's me. In fact, I wish there'd be more logging. Like around here, lately, it's just been pretty much ash is all they're taking out. And the logging's been really held back for over the years in a lot of areas, especially in national forests. So I wish they'd do more logging, because I'm willing to sacrifice some areas for a little while, because I know in return that's going to create more cover, better habitat for deer, and it's gonna create bigger, healthier deer too, and bigger bucks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Before we go into more about the cuts, I want to talk about what you just said right there. Yeah. I have this. I don't know if you can call it a theory, because I feel like there's so much data to back it up. But I feel like areas in the big woods that have a mix and a lot of logging cuts, from older cuts to younger cuts and stuff, grow bigger deer than areas that are just old growth forest.
You're absolutely right, because a deer's primary food source, especially year round, it can't be acorns, it can't be mast. Mm-hmm. In the big woods, we can't count on ag land, farmland. So for big woods deer, in order for them to find their max potential as far as health and antler growth and all those kind of things, logging is extremely important, because that is a tremendous food source, regrowth. And it's not only that trees are regrowing, but say you go into an area where there hasn't been logging and you look, say there hasn't been logging for 30, 50 years, whatever, pretty much all that's under those trees is ferns, and ferns are one of the least nutritional sources of food for deer there is. They need plants, they need young trees. Like, that's the best food source. And even though, when there's acorns, it's like icing on the cake, but for them to really have their best chance at a good healthy life, they need to be where there's good browse. So when you have areas where there's mixes of cover, because say a real fresh clear cut, it's great for food, but if you clear cut 50 miles, or not even, say if you clear cut even a good 2-mile square of land, really that's probably not good either, because all there is just an open area, and then in a year, there's new growth, but there's no actual hiding cover. So when you have some old cover here, there, all different varieties and different age classes of cover, you're just creating just the most perfect environment for whitetails. And most importantly, that's like a dream spot for a mature buck.
Yeah. I love each cut has its own thing, the real old ones that you get, even the 12 to 20-year-old cuts that have a purpose. You got, the 3 to 8 year, 3 to 10-year-old cuts those are my favorite ones in my opinion. But all right, so talking about those cuts, what is your favorite like type of cut to hunt?
Sure. Well, the one thing about this part or this area that I'm hunting that I have found, and this may not relate to every area, but we have a lot of older cover here, and now that the logging has just come back the past few years, we either have like kind of older cuts and we have really fresh cuts. We don't have like that middle ground of like what you were saying, that 8 to 10 year, which may be the perfect whitetail world, but I haven't had enough experience to see those kind of areas.
Yep.
I find that when I can find an old cut, especially sometimes right on the edge of a new cut, or when they clear cut an area that's on the border of an old cut, like those are really good spots. Because what it is they, especially like early season, that is absolute prime spot for a buck to be early, because he's not covering a lot of ground then, and he'll bed in that old cut. He'll go out to the new cut, he'll feed, then he can go right back to bedding in a hurry. Yep. So that just creates the perfect scenario there. That's kind of what I'm seeing. I do have some spots though where there's some younger cuts, and they've been good. And but what I find about some of those young cuts, and I don't think we've talked about it yet, but you got to have like some patchy openings inside of those cuts for bedding at least. Now they might go in there and browse, but they may not. As far as bedding purposes, if there's not, grassy openings, like they're not laying on a pile of briars. I can tell you that. The bedding habitat is there's almost a science to it, even though in the big woods it happens naturally. But, in order for it to meet their requirements, it's got to have like openings, or if not, they'll probably bed more on the edges of it than right in it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's so true. Like if you're from my experience, what I've found is you get in those cuts, say a big cut, as it starts to get older and stuff, they'll bed on the interior of it, but there's got to be an opening.
Absolutely.
They're not gonna go 100 yards into thick briars and just plop their ass down and be like, oh, that's not. If there's old logging roads that are running in there, and then there's always those openings. I love those type of spots that are on the inner, and that's why it's so hard for me to say like I only hunt the edges of a cut, because sometimes I do go on the interiors, but it's not, like I said, I'm not just getting in the thick of the thick. There's openings and there's travel corridors that run through them that almost act like their own edge. In a way.
And like you hit a really good point about those like logging roads going through them. Because, we talked about before, when you're hunting a clear cut, it's like one of the most noisiest places there is. Like you cannot really sneak and be quiet. But those logging roads, those access roads, are usually just a little bit grassy, or sometimes just dirt. Like you cannot even hear yourself walking sometimes. So they're great ways to sneak in, and especially if there's a buck bed more on the interior, that is a scenario where you can probably get a little bit closer and not have to worry about noise using those roads. So I think that's something for people to keep in mind is, you find a clear cut, and if it has some access roads, then that's the time when you probably should consider hunting more inside of it than on the edge, because you can get in there quietly.
Yeah, and also those logging roads, depending on once they start getting grass and stuff on them, then they'll scrape the hell out of them too.
Absolutely.
I love running cameras on those logging roads, and we'll say if you get a couple of them that cross in an area, 9 times out of 10 there'll be a scrape.
Yep.
There.
And that's a really good spot to set up. And this is one of those situations, like you've learned from cameras too. Like, those are the kind of spots that I look for. It's sometimes I think people are overthinking, especially when they listen to me. It's like, man, he must just know something that like he's not saying, but really what it is, it's not that. It's just, you find those kind of spots, but you just can't expect to sit there one time and it happens. And you can't even expect there in a 3-day sit to make it happen. But what I do is I keep sticking to that plan, that formula, and I don't get discouraged, and I believe in it, and I hunt those kind of spots. And sooner or later, when you put your time in, you get an opportunity. Yeah. So that's a lot of people they're doing everything right, and I'm not trying to brag or anything, but a lot of people are doing everything right. They're just not giving it enough time.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And like you said about not overthinking it, those areas aren't that hard to identify if you're walking around.
No, that's what I mean.
It literally, it almost seems dumb because it makes too much sense.
Absolutely.
Okay, we got 2 trails that cross. They got cover around them. Yeah. There's a big scrape here. I'm going to sit here for a few days and see what happens.
Yeah, and what happens is on day 2, they've sat there 2 days and they haven't seen anything, and then it's like, man, I just can't take it anymore. Like, this must not work. But then I've learned if I've left a camera there Thursday or Friday, look who shows up. If I just so you just keep putting that formula into those scenarios, and sooner or later, I'm telling you, if you're patient, you're going to see more success.
And logging cuts, like when you get into some of those thicker, older ones like that, you can't see very far.
Nope.
And so you're not going to see very many deer.
No, you're not.
You need to have a strong mind because you're going to go times a lot of time of just you and your tree stand.
Yep.
Like, that's all that's.
Yep. No.
Because there's not as much. That cut could be way more active than anywhere else, but you just can't see them.
Absolutely. Like, I've learned that with snow on the ground. I've sat in a spot and it's like, man, I just wasn't the right spot today. But then I go 100 yards and deer crossed here. I go 50 yards there, deer crossed there. And that's just how the big woods works. I mean, they don't always have a spot on a spot that they're coming through every day. They have their areas, and it's, like I talked about, being inside like a pinball machine. You just got to hope that you're inside that machine, but the pinball comes your way. There's a lot of different reasons why it might not come your way, but you got to pick maybe the most likely spot where it seems like it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
And as we're sitting here talking, I have so many spots in my head that are running through my mind and thinking how that's gonna work and lay out. Yep. But I do want to cover. I know you said you hadn't hunted them as much just from the area around here, but that middle age group, say even around 3 years old, starting to just estimating 10 years old. Yep. That area, the reason why I like it is because the briars grow up enough and you start getting that new growth high enough that I feel like, again, this is Beau's theory in his head, but that the deer feel a sense of security walking through it because it's above their eye level. So they'll walk it more, but if you get some of those, they'll leave some of those select trees. It might, a lot of times like a hemlock tree, they seem to leave those, and pine trees up in these cuts. If you can bury yourself in one of those, you can actually see quite a ways over top of it.
Yep.
Yeah, and see where the deer are moving, but they're more comfortable moving in there. Plus that fresh browse and stuff creates so much food. They're bedding and they're feeding all in kind of one area.
For sure.
So that's one of the reasons that I've really liked those type of areas. But I used to have like that theory that they'd bed in just in the middle of the thickest, nastiest stuff. And because that's what I remember, my dad and my family telling me, you gotta go thick, gotta go thick.
Exactly. It's the old timers.
Yeah, and it's not, and And I think I was just taking them the wrong way, too. They didn't mean that they're literally betting whether the deer can't even move because they have so much thick stuff. They just meant cover in general, which is still holds true. It's just they're betting on the edges of it where they can see.
But there are spots, not that like I said, I don't have tons of experience in those spots, but from hunting and scouting some of them, there's some of those spots where they look really good, but for the most part, they really are like impenetrable. Like there's maybe one or two little logging roads going through it. Other than that, it's just nasty. And they're still good spots, but they're not good for bedding because, like I said, they're not laying in areas unless it's got like some good grassy openings or something like that. So that's why you got to go in those spots like postseason and every year pick 5-6 new locations, new cuts, and go in there. Hey, is there some bedding in here? I guarantee there's going to be feeding in there because there's tons of browse. But then you got to decide: is this a spot that maybe I can catch a buck during the day, or is it just a spot maybe I have to overlook because it's just feeding activity and it's all at night, or that's where you just got to you got to do your scouting.
And why? I don't know if you do this, but when I see those super thick clear cuts, even though I think that might be too thick or too nasty, automatically I'm like, there's a 170-inch deer living here. Like there's, you just think because it's
Sure. Well, I'll tell you how you tell that really quick is you walk the perimeter, and a lot of times there's not many like rubbing sized trees around there on some of them. But if you see 3 or 4 big rubs on the edge of that, I'm telling you, there's a big buck probably bedding in there.
Yeah.
So that's all you got to do. I'm telling you, I've found some really good bedding spots that way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Have you ever hunted off the ground, like say still hunting clear cuts or anything? Like older clear cuts?
Not really, but it's something I think that could work really good. It's just like I said, especially for I don't really get to do any rifle hunting in PA, and I get that six-day period every year, and I kind of just have a strategy, that is worked for me, so I'm probably not going to try to break something that doesn't need to be fixed. But I also think that what you're talking about could really be a tremendous strategy, and like maybe even walking around the edge of those cuts doing some grunting or something like that. Definitely could be an incredible tactic.
Yeah. Yep. My dad's found success. There's 3 bucks that he has mounted on the wall that he's killed off the ground walking those logging roads, running and snapping sticks and getting them to come up out of some of those bedding spots. And because he had told this story, and I don't mean to go down the rabbit hole here, but he told this story about this buck back in 2005 that he killed. At the time was his biggest deer. It was an 11 point, had a little drop tine on it and stuff, and he got trail camera photos of this deer outside the cut, and he hunted it like 12 different days surrounding this cut and it was only getting him nighttime photos.
Wow.
He knew he was in this cut somewhere.
Yeah.
So one day he went out on the ground and ended up shooting him at like 6 yards frontal, because he got him coming in.
Wow.
And those types of it's what I'm getting at with this, logging cuts are just awesome areas all around. And there's so many different strategies and ways you can look at it.
Absolutely.
But but I said, there's a lot of challenges with it too. If they were easy to hunt, then everybody would be doing it.
Yeah, and one thing I want to bring up though is, we talk a little bit about like Onyx and like Google Maps and stuff where you can just be sitting at home finding those spots, which is a tremendous strategy. But anymore, what I'm doing is I'm also trying to either find spots that, cuts that you really have to pay attention to on there. They're almost overlooked because I am running into more people doing that. It is a great thing, and I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I just think that some of it, especially if it's easy access, unfortunately, there's a fair amount of people catching on to it.
And there's the other thing I was going to say about logging cuts is a lot of times they're close to roads because they got to get trucks in there to do it. And you're going to get bird hunters in there. You're going to get a lot of other. So there's frustrations that can be if you have your own private logging cut. go ahead. But like it can be difficult.
Yeah. And that's another thing.
Us talking about it right now, we just screwed ourselves some more, Steve.
But I think one thing too, if you are finding spots like that, I do think most of the hunters set up on the edges.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can find ways to get inside without making too much noise, or you just, especially when you start running into other hunters, not that it's a competition, but you got to be a little bit different, because especially those bucks, like your dad, when he killed that buck, what it took was doing something different. That buck knew that your dad was hunting him. I guarantee it.
100%.
And what he did to kill that buck was he completely changed his whole game plan, and that buck wasn't expecting that. And he's like, nope, I guess this is a real deal, and your dad fooled him. So in those situations, that's what you start running into other hunters and those kind of things. Start trying to see what they're doing, and what they're doing may look right and be right, but you got to realize that those deer have caught on to that, and then do something completely different. I've talked about that before, and in a couple scenarios, that's how I've been able to kill bucks in an area, because just being a little bit different,
Yeah. It's there's no one set way of anything,
Nope.
and that's it's crazy to me. Like, as I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm thinking of things that I want to try in my own setup, but I'm never going to do things exactly like you are, and you're not going to do it like somebody else, and that's what molds people into their own hunters. It's just taking things and figuring out what works and what doesn't for you, and kind of building your own style with it. And I think the Big Woods is a place that you have to be creative with things. There's not a book that can be read. There can't be a podcast that you can listen to that's going to make you, successful every year. Hopefully this stuff helps you. It helps get you on the right track. Yeah. Or maybe Steve and I are just coming up, just telling you the exact opposite of what we do, because that's our whole goal. No, I'm just kidding. But that's I think that logging cuts in general too. Just like, I don't know. I love them. I love hunting them, and I've actually had a couple of loggers reach out to me on social media.
Oh, really?
Like, thanks for giving logging a good name.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, because it's so healthy for the forest, like you said, even
definitely.
without not even having the deer involved in the animals. Like, it's just healthy for the forest themselves, and getting the sunlight and nutrients. And I'm not a forester, I'm not a biologist, but just from what I see, and it's a really, really helpful thing, that's for sure.
Yeah. Maybe lastly on logging, I've had a couple particular bucks that because there's over the years been so little logging around here, like recent logging, where all of a sudden a buck didn't show up in a certain spot that year, and I'm like, man, what's going on? And then I start to think, whenever a buck leaves, it's probably something related to habitat. And then how I found a couple of these bucks was, I was like, you know what? I said, there's that cut that's like 2-3 miles away, and I'm wondering if he could be there, because right now it's probably about prime for him, or something like that scenario. And that's really what had happened. Because even though we talk about a certain buck living in a core area, but that's not year round. Like, bucks they shift in different areas depending on their needs. And I think every now and then a certain buck goes on like a big excursion. Mm-hmm. And I think they just do that to probably better their lifestyle. It would be like, say
let's go on vacation.
Yeah, or say you just graduated from college and you're like, you know what, I'm going to travel from here to California until I find a job or to get set up somewhere. I think bucks like that, they're like, you know what, this year I'm just going to check out and make sure there's something that's not a little bit better somewhere. And that's what happens is when they shift, they just found somewhere a little bit better.
Yeah.
The food's better, the cover's better. So when you see a buck disappear and maybe for sure that he didn't get killed, start thinking, well, where is maybe the next closest best place for the best habitat or something that he's going to really need. And like I said, we talked about logging. It's by far the best habitat in the big woods.
Yeah, I couldn't agree anymore. And with newer cuts, I don't hunt them much except for late season.
Oh yeah,
it seems like the deer funneling them.
Yep.
A couple years ago, I spotted we had snow on Thanksgiving, and I was driving around just glassing, and there was a new logging cut. And actually talked to the loggers. They said they've been seeing these deer and some bucks coming out in there. So I was driving, and they're right in the middle of the day, just feeding in this cut. And so I went in there then the first day of rifle, and I ended up missing the deer. But anyways, he was coming out, and I think another hunter pushed him, because he was coming down the edge, right through the thick cover on the edge of the new, because it was an old cut and then the new cut there. But it was really cool with that. But usually I'm not the new cuts, like you said, I'm looking at them as I guess an investment down the road, more or less than right now I'm gonna hunt it.
Yep.
You see a long ways, but that's about it.
For sure.
Yeah. So, is there anything else, Steve, you think that we should cover on this episode, or do you think we've talked enough?
Well, I'm sure we've talked enough. Just one thing that I always bring up to whenever I get an opportunity to talk is, we talk a lot about, knowledge and strategies, but, one of the most important things that I want to preach to people is just finding like a mindset and a strategy that you're confident in, and developing a confidence, because hunting is, you can be a great shot, you can have the best gear, you can put all the time in you want, but for the most part, it's a mental game. And your mental attitude and how you approach hunting, that's one of the most important things. And I just think that, we all get caught up in the newest tactics, the newest gear. But really, all in all, it's a mental thing that you have to have the right discipline and mindset. And after a while, if you can accomplish the mental part of it, then some of the other things will come easier. So
yeah,
I always say that to people, because I just see a lot of guys, especially new hunters. I see him with the most expensive gear. Hey, I look at this gun I bought, or this bow, and now I got it. I got the gear. When really I'm like, you know what? I know people that are shooting bows made in 1980 or 1990, and it's really not that. It's about developing a style and something that you're confident in, and just getting that right mental mindset that you believe in, and then worry about the other stuff.
That's such a good point. Well, a couple things there. The point that you were talking about with like people thinking you need, the best gear, you need that. I fall into the trap of sometimes I feel like I'm not sending the right message, because I love messing around with gear and all this stuff. And like, that's not what makes or breaks a hunt whatsoever. Can you be more comfortable? Is it easier to shoot this bow or what? Maybe, yes. That's not something you can argue, but that doesn't make you a good hunter.
Nope.
That just isn't another tool in the arsenal, I guess. But it's coming to that mental part of it. If you look at least what I see from people that are consistently successful, they're the ones that they're not the one, they don't quit.
Yep.
They just keep going.
Absolutely.
And two, they always have a positive mindset with it. And they think tomorrow's going to be the day, and they're not like I guess being oblivious to things, but they have that mindset, and you got to believe in yourself with it even when things are really terrible. And I'm saying this so confidently now, and I struggle with it just as much as anybody does at times, but you have to kind of and there was one thing that also, I don't mean to keep going on this topic,
okay.
but like another thing, I always reference things that my dad taught me, because he's taught, so much of it, but he would say to me, he's like, if you're hunting, 6-7 days in a row, or 6 days in Pennsylvania, and it's day 5 and you're super wore out, sleep in an hour.
Yeah, there you go.
And then just go out, and you got to get your mind right.
Absolutely.
He's like, you're going to be way more efficient if you get that extra hour sleep that one day or whatever. He goes, it's just, and I truly believe that at times. You got to be smart with it and keep your head on your shoulders, because you'll beat yourself. You will lose because of yourself, not because of the hunting was bad.
No, that's what I just keep trying to say is, there's a lot of people bouncing around trying different things, and really the success is in plain sight and within reach, but they're not. Their focus is scattered when first starting off. Just trying to get on more consistent success. It's all going to be mental, and you just have to be the kind of person that doesn't get frustrated, angry. You take a deep breath, relax, and you can't. If you're one of those people that needs constant entertainment, like a little kid that has to, be playing video games all day, then hunting's probably not your thing. But if you can develop and just be a good, strong-minded person, I think you've really accomplished 80% of it, right there.
And that patience just transfers to everything else in your life.
Absolutely.
And I'm a strong advocate that hunting can, if you use it correctly, can make you a better person, or if you learn how to apply that to other things.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think I'm naturally, and maybe nobody is, but naturally a patient person.
Yep.
And that's it's taken, or showing that you had to work. You don't get instant gratification.
Yep.
So like me with my elk hunting journey, like I felt like with deer hunting, not saying that I'm really good at it or anything, but I felt like I could have success with it.
Yep.
Where elk hunting was so new to me that I just kept screwing things up, and you just have to keep going.
Keep going.
And it's constantly putting in work. And that's the way it is for new people with big woods hunting.
Yep.
Like, this is not going to be easy.
Yep.
It might take you a couple years, even if you think you're doing everything right, to get it done. Maybe it doesn't. But you just got to keep rolling with it and keep your head on your shoulders.
And really though, if it's not fun, then it probably isn't the sport for you. I understand it, and we all like different things, but to me, all those things that we've brought up, all the challenges, and even some of the frustrations, like, it's all fun to me. So I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't fun, and I'm sure you wouldn't be either. So we have to make sure that we're having fun, and I know we're just all extremely thankful, especially through the past few months and the times that we're seeing that we have a place like the woods around us to go and just forget about everything. What's amazing about the woods is you go out there right now and nothing's really changed out there. Then you go into the city or you go to town or whatever, and everyone's wearing masks, and there's signs on the door, you can only do this and do that. But then we're just so thankful to have these woods. You just go out. I can still be myself. I don't have to worry about someone being sick, or I don't have to worry about the store closing a couple hours early. Like, it's just so much to be thankful for. That's for sure.
That's such a good point, and that's helped me get through this. The whole thing. Like, that's not a whole lot changed for me, to be honest. But
same here.
Well, anyways, Steve, where can people find some more information on you, and then your guiding service as well?
Sure. Yeah. First best place to look would be social media. Facebook, just look for Sherk's Guide Service, or Instagram. I have an Instagram page too. Same thing, Sherk's Guide Service. I also have a website, sherksguideservice.com. And that's pretty much it. I get an occasional email on that, but I prefer to, people reach me at those sites to start. And, I just, before we close, I just want people to know that, this isn't just a business. I don't want to consider myself just a hunting guide or out there to just take people hunting. And, I want to be more than that. I want to be the person that you can message me, and I hope that maybe I have a tip for you, or, when you're having a tough season, don't be afraid to shoot me a message. And I'll always find a way to encourage someone, because I really am trying anymore to represent that as hunters. And I just have this feeling, the way that I see the world going right now, like, we have to all come together we all have to make sure we're on the same team, because you can see how easily our rights and our privileges can be taken away now. Like, we've seen certain things. You can own a business and it can be shut down in a second. And without us being united and together, I promise our sport can be taken away in a hurry. So that's another reason why I'm just glad that I can reach out to so many people. Is I want everyone to be on my team, and I want to be on their team, and all of us be on the same team.
Yeah.
And let's all I hope and pray that we all can just have a great 2020 hunting season despite all that we're going through, because I know the future, even this next season, looks a little bit scary, but I know for sure I'm going to do whatever it takes, no matter what laws get made or what we're told. It's going to be tough to keep me out of the woods this deer season, and I'm sure you're the same way too. So let's just all make sure that we are encouraging one another, wanting success for everyone, and if we do that, and we're all just one big family, I don't think anyone's going to ever be able to take what we love away from us.
That words couldn't be said any more true than that. That's being out there for everybody else and not bickering amongst each other. There's enough of that going on out there. Let's be in, the woods are all, we can all agree on the woods are our happy place.
Absolutely.
So let's agree on that. So Steve, thank you so much for coming on and welcoming me into your camp full of all these giant Pennsylvania public land deer. And, and I look forward to, we'll definitely do some scouting videos. And now that we live so close here, we'll have to get together more and talk.
I'm looking forward to it. So
cool.
Can't wait.
All right, Steve. Well, we will talk soon.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of East Meets West Hunt with your host, Beau Martonik. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit eastmeetswesthunt.com, Facebook at East Meets West Outdoors, and Instagram at East Meets West Hunt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please review and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.